Let's talk about another name that was taken only a few spots later at the 203 was DeAndre Swift. I had him as my top running back prospect prior to the draft, and he goes to somewhat of a gross landing spot in the Detroit Lions. What do you think, outlook-wise, we should be thinking here for Swift from a fantasy perspective this season and a dynasty perspective long-term?
This one's tricky because he was my top prospect going into the draft as well at the running back position, and it's truly a case of great talent in a bad fantasy situation. We talked about CEH, and he's a great talent in a great situation. Swift, you only get one piece of the pie. So I look at him this season, and he's one of those guys locked into a committee. I think he's going to be potentially an RB2 this year, maybe a low-end RB2. But the problem is Kerryon Johnson is still there in Detroit. Yes, he's injury-prone, but no, we can't bank on Kerryon Johnson for 100% certainty getting hurt again this season. And Kerryon's still young, and the Lions want to use him. They believe in his talent, and I truly believe that. Well, maybe I don't as much now that they went out and took Swift early in the second round, but they're certainly not going to put Kerryon Johnson on the bench like we're expecting the Chiefs to do with Damian Williams. I think this is a timeshare. I think it slightly favors Swift on the season in terms of touches. And it's just going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. I think Swift has RB1 upside if he gets the workhorse role. But even in Detroit, we have never seen a running back, at least in recent memory, be incredibly successful with a workhorse role. So it's not a great situation as far as Detroit and what they like to do in the run game. And then obviously Kerryon Johnson is there, like I mentioned. So for Swift, I think in Dynasty he's a great pickup. He's not someone I want to rely on, especially early and often, to have to start weeks 1 through 8 in the 2020 season. I think as the season goes on, he'll continue to get more and more touches and more involved. And certainly beyond 2020, I think he's got a bright future ahead. But for the 2020 redraft season, Kerryon Johnson just casts too big of a shadow on DeAndre Swift's situation in Detroit.
Yeah, the real question becomes how much do you really want the Lions RB1, if you even think he will be the RB1. But it's tough. I mean, Kerryon, like you said, he can't stay healthy. He missed 8 games in 2019, 6 in 2018. And really, he kind of looked not like his former self last year. I mean, he only ran at 3.6 yards per attempt after 5.4 the year prior. Listen to this. The Lions haven't had a top 24 fantasy finish in PPR since Joique Bell in 2014.
No.
That's so gross. I hate
Joique
saying
Bell.
that.
That's a trip down memory lane right there.
He's one of those names that you bring up. It's like, who are those guys that won you a championship in fantasy that you never heard from again? Joique Bell is always top of the list. The only way I really see Swift getting to his ceiling, which I think is a high-end RB2, is if they feed him through the air. And it's something that I think Swift can do, but not so much really his sweet spot. I think the Lions roll with other more pure receiving backs. We've seen names like J.D. McKissick come in and get 50-plus targets. Even like Amir Abdullah, Theo Riddick, those kind of guys are going to be in there taking some of that passing work away too. So I think that hurts. And McKissick had 42 targets last year and Ty Johnson had 31. So, right, like there's 70 targets to the air that are probably going to go to the RB3 or 4 in that running back room. One thing I want to throw out there, and this kind of speaks to Detroit's rushing woes, is Football Outsiders has their O-line at 20th. And Pro Football Focus actually had them at 11th last season, which was blew my mind a little bit when I was going through their offensive line. But one of the big takeaways was they let Graham Glasgow walk in free agency. He signed with the Broncos. That was one of their best offensive linemen, if not their best. They did draft 2 guards in the 3rd and 4th round, but I just don't really like the situation for Swift, even if he gets the volume. So to me, if he falls in a draft, I'll take a flyer on him. Why not? We're always looking for running backs that can take over. You look at Kerryon's probability to miss some time. I like that for Swift, but I mean, Vegas has Swift at the 2nd highest odds to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. What are your thoughts on that?
That's brutal. There's no chance. I don't know who's taking that bet. But yeah, I know I'm with you. I think you made a lot of good points about the theoretic type back, and something that's interesting about this pick is that J.D. McKissick is out of town. He signed with Washington, so I almost feel like not half the reason, but a piece of it has to be in the past they've had their feature back, which might be a 1st and 2nd down guy, the scat back that's going to get the receiving work like the Theo Riddicks, the J.D. McKissicks, and then even like a goal line back or a guy to come in and spell their feature back. So they've really
LeGarrette Blount.
Yeah, a big committee in the past. And part of this move to me is saying like, hey, instead of using 3 guys in a running back rotation, let's try to use 2 guys and move forward and channel everything through Swift and Kerryon Johnson. Maybe that'll help Kerryon Johnson stay healthy. Maybe that'll help Swift not run the tread off of his tires too soon. So for me, no, I'm with you. I think Swift is a low-end RB2. Kerryon Johnson, I think, is still an RB3. I certainly think there's going to be weeks where both of these guys are startable. It might just be a guessing game on picking which one's going to get the touchdown this week or which one's going to get 5 targets this week. And I just don't want to play that game every single week.
If we compare the situation to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it's like if Hilaire is just taking over, running really efficiently, I think all the carries go his way, whereas I don't see that necessarily being the case for Swift. And even if we look at, we threw out some of like the goal line backs and different backs that Matt Patricia's had, like he was giving a large percentage of the carries to LeGarrette Blount, even when Kerryon Johnson was
so
in
bad.
There fresh. Like Kerryon Johnson was fresh. It was his first year in 2018 of running at 4.5 yards per clip. So it's like you're still giving LeGarrette Blount all that volume. It's not a clear situation like that to me. So that's why I have Swift relatively far down compared to some of these other names.
Something else that's just really interesting, Steph. I'm doing a little bit of recon right now, and Kerryon Johnson, just in 2018, 2 seasons ago, was drafted early in the 2nd round. So for me, he's 1 year older than DeAndre Swift. So I don't see them just kicking him to the curb right away because he had one season where he wasn't quite as efficient and got hurt. So I think they look at this as a young 1-2 punch, and if they can both stay healthy, they're going to have one of the best 1-2 punches in the league. So unfortunately, as fantasy owners, that means neither of them is probably going to rise to that elite level that we think they can get to. Maybe good for the Lions, but from a fantasy football perspective, you really hate to see it.